The year 1981, the Middle East, is burning in the fire of regional tensions and the war between Iran and Iraq. Saddam Hussein, the ruthless and ambitious dictator of Iraq, dreams of building a nuclear bomb. And on the other side, Iran and Israel are simultaneously facing a real threat. This story narrates one of the boldest, most dangerous, and most controversial operations in the history of military warfare. An operation that is said to have been carried out with the cooperation of Iran and Israel, two countries that appear to be enemies but collaborate against a common enemy. The story of Operation Opera, an operation that destroyed Iraq's Osirak nuclear reactor in the blink of an eye. Let's go back to the late 1970s. The Middle East is like a powder keg that could explode at any moment. The wars between Iraq and Israel have still left deep scars. Saddam Hussein, who has just taken power in Iraq, is dreaming of becoming the dominant power in the region. He wants to turn Iraq into a superpower. And what better than a nuclear bomb? Saddam, who considers himself the heir to the Mesopotamian civilization, believes that Iraq has the right to rule the world. He hates the Iranians and the Israelis, and if he could, he would destroy them both. With the help of France, Saddam starts a secret project 30 kilometers southeast of Baghdad. The Osirak nuclear reactor, named after the Babylonian month, or Tammuz, is a reminder of the attack on the Jews. This reactor is supposedly built for peaceful research, but the truth is something else. In November 1976, the Iraqi government signs an agreement with France for nuclear cooperation and purchases an Osirak-class reactor along with enriched uranium. The construction of the reactor begins in 1979 at the Nuclear Development Center. However, Israel, which viewed Iraq as a hostile neighbor, considered this project an existential threat. Iran, which was engaged in a war with Iraq, was also deeply concerned about this project. It is said that an article was published in a Baghdad newspaper revealing Saddam's intention to annihilate Israel with a nuclear bomb. Of course, I haven't seen the source of this claim, but this rumor is widely circulated in the media space. Usually, Saddam Hussein acted cautiously in such statements, and the existence of such an article might be exaggerated. In Tel Aviv, Mossad spies received terrifying reports. Saddam is closer than ever to building a nuclear bomb. This concern was not only held by the Israelis, other Arab countries like Saudi Arabia and Jordan were also worried about Saddam's ambitions. However, due to their complex relations with Iraq, they did not openly take a stance against him. This concern gave the Israelis more motivation to act quickly. Israel initially tried to stop Saddam through diplomacy, but when France, under the leadership of Jacques Chirac, agreed to a $200 million contract to build a reactor and sell Mirage jets and 7,000 Renault cars to Iraq, the diplomatic hopes faded. Jean Pionguer, a prominent French journalist, later revealed that this deal was not only commercial, but also rife with corruption. French officials were tempted by promises of oil contracts and large sums of money. Iraq, said with the largest oil reserves in the Middle East, did not need a reactor to produce energy. Everyone knew this project was initiated to build a nuclear weapon. Mossad, the Israeli intelligence agency, took action. They first tried to stop the project through sabotage. In April 1979, in a warehouse in southern France, where the reactor core was ready to be shipped to Iraq, they planted 2 bombs. The explosion caused damage, but it was not enough. Iraq repaired the parts. However, this sabotage delayed the project by 6 months. In the next phase, Mossad targeted the project's scientists. One of them was Yahya El-Meshad, an Egyptian nuclear scientist working for Saddam in Paris. Mossad agents first tried to buy him off with money, no power, and even other promises. But El-Meshad resisted. On June 14, 1980, at the Meridian Hotel in Paris, Mossad agents went to his room. It is said that Mossad used a prostitute as bait for this operation. However, this claim cannot be verified. There are numerous stories that the Israelis used a prostitute. That is, they used a prostitute as bait to eliminate this Egyptian scientist. After that, Mossad forces launched a brutal attack on him and disfigured his face. It is even said that witnesses who were aware of this incident were later physically eliminated. Of course, this story has appeared in various accounts, but there is no evidence or documentation for it. Therefore, we cannot completely dismiss it, nor can we fully credit it. I have merely presented it in this narrative so that you are aware of all the available information. However, some parts of it might indeed be distorted or lack evidence. I don't mean to say that it didn't happen. There might just be no evidence for it. In other claims, it is said that 12 Iraqi nuclear scientists were assassinated. This too might be somewhat exaggerated. I mean, the killing of 12 people is a bit strange. And I think if Saddam Hussein's intelligence had realized that his scientists were being eliminated, they would have somehow saved them. But anyway, this narrative has also emerged and I have shared it with you. And in these events, Mossad was not alone. Certainly, MI6 and the CIA of the United States were also assisting it to successfully carry out this operation. However, their role has been downplayed in this matter or in the narrative present in the available documents. Throughout the project, reports indicate that about 12 nuclear scientists died under mysterious circumstances, ranging from car accidents to poisoning and drowning. Some were even killed at official French banquets with poisoned food. All these incidents have been attributed to Mossad. Now we come to the unexpected player in this story, Iran. While Israel was trying to stop Saddam with espionage and sabotage, Iran was engaged in a bloody war with Iraq. Saddam, who hated Iranians and Jews equally, dreamed of destroying both. But in the meantime, the common enemy was bringing Iran and Israel closer together. A secret cooperation that few Paco dare to talk about. Before the 1979 revolution, Iran, under the leadership of Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi, had warm relations with Israel. The Shah, who was not fond of the Arabs, saw Israel as a balancing weight against the Arab countries. He never fully stood behind Israel, as he was a cautious politician, and did not want Iran to be in a weak position if the Arabs won the war against Israel. But secretly, Iran and Israel were allies. After the revolution and the rise to power of Ayatollah Khomeini, everything changed. Iran became a supporter of Palestine and Yasser Arafat that was warmly welcomed in Tehran. However, this support did not last. Arafat and the Palestinians sided with Saddam in the Iran-Iraq war, and even some Palestinians fought as soldiers for Iraq against Iran. Meanwhile, Iran was in dire need of weapons and spare parts in the war with Iraq. Iran's American aircraft like the F-4 and F-5 were grounded due to a lack of spare parts. The United States, due to the embassy hostage crisis, was not providing any assistance to Iran. This is where Israel entered the scene. Israel, which had the same aircraft and parts, was supplying the parts to Iran at exorbitant prices through arms dealers, including Adnan Khashoggi, a former SAVAK agent who had become an international arms dealer. This deal was not out of friendship, but rather out of pragmatism. Saddam was a common enemy who, if he obtained a nuclear bomb, would destroy both Iran and Israel. However, the cooperation between Iran and Israel went beyond weapons. In 1980, Israel provided Iran with vital intelligence through a Mossad agent. Saddam was making movements on Iraq's western borders and was contemplating a nuclear attack on Iran. This intelligence prompted the Iranian Air Force to react. On September 30th, 1980, two Iranian F-4 Phantom jets attacked the Osirak Reactor. Although this attack actually did not damage the main dome of the reactor, it only destroyed the administrative buildings. It sent a clear message to Saddam: Iran will not surrender. More importantly, this attack demonstrated that the reactor was vulnerable and provided lessons for Israel. Israel just needed more precise information for the final attack. It was here that the Iranian Air Force shone once again. An F-4 reconnaissance aircraft flew into the heart of Iraqi skies in a deadly and courageous operation. The Iranian pilot, with unparalleled skill and bravery, took high-quality photos from above the Osirak reactor, showing the reactor's critical points. These photos were crucial for planning Operation Opera and enabled Israel to deliver a precise strike to the heart of Saddam's nuclear program. I read numerous reports from Western newspapers stating that Iranian military personnel placed the photos they had taken of the Osirak nuclear reactor in a sealed metal container, and certainly with coordination from high-ranking officials, delivered it to the Israelis so that they could use it in Operation Opera. Of course, this cannot be confirmed by me. I mean, no official from the Islamic Republic has come forward to confirm that, yes, we played a role in Operation Opera or that we provided this information. It's merely Western sources making such a claim, and it depends on whether we trust them or not to believe or dismiss this story. But if this cooperation did occur, it was certainly done with the coordination of high-ranking officials of the regime. I mean at the level of the president or the deputy commander-in-chief, whom you know who they are. With the failure of all diplomatic and espionage efforts, Menachem Begin had no other option. He and his cabinet knew that attacking Osirak would have severe consequences. Global condemnation, sanctions, and perhaps even war. But Saddam's threat was much greater. Begin, who was himself a Holocaust survivor, told his cabinet that we cannot wait for a second Holocaust. If this mission succeeds, we will save Israel forever. In October 1980, Mossad reported that a reactor would be fueled and operational by June 1981. Reports indicated that Iraq had enough radioactive material to build 4 nuclear bombs. This was a tough deadline. The Israeli cabinet voted to attack, especially after the Iranian Air Force attacked an Iraqi airbase in April 1981, severely weakening Saddam's air capabilities. This was a golden opportunity. The Iraqi Air Force was still in the process of rebuilding, and the military had to act before they recovered. Israel selected its best pilots: Ziv Raz, Reilik Shafir, Amir Nachumi, and Ilan Ramon, who later became Israel's first astronaut and perished in the Columbia shuttle disaster in 2003. These young pilots, many of whom were the grandchildren or children of Holocaust survivors, knew that this mission might be one way, but none of them hesitated. In the briefing, they were told that they would either succeed or Israel would be destroyed forever. On June 7, 1981, at 3:55 p.m., the sun was setting, and the sky had turned orange. At the secret base of Etzion, near the tourist city of Eilat in southern Sinai, 8 F-16 Falcons, known as Nets in the Israeli Air Force, along with 6 F-15s for support, are ready for takeoff. Each F-16 is equipped with 2 900-kilogram Mark 84 bombs, Sidewinder missiles, and additional fuel tanks. The extra weight of the bombs and the external fuel tanks, which are installed contrary to standard F-16 regulations, have made takeoff extremely difficult. 2 of the F-16s show minor errors in the fuel system, but the pilots, not wanting to miss this historic mission, do not report these issues. Ze'ev Raz, the leader of the formation, Ilam, is in charge of guiding the group. The planes barely take off from the runway, and Ze'ev Raz manages to lift off at the last moment, just as the runway is almost finished. The F-15s fly behind them, ready to intercept any Iraqi aircraft. As the planes fly over the Red Sea coast, the tourists see them and think that the Israeli Air Force is conducting a drill. However, these planes are on a mission that will determine the fate of Israel. To avoid detection, Israeli fighter pilots fly at an incredible altitude of 30 meters above the ground, sometimes even lower, down to 9 meters from the ground. Imagine the planes traveling at a speed of 1,000 kilometers per hour, while hills and valleys rush by beneath them. They chose an indirect route, flying over the Gulf of Aqaba, and then through the skies of Jordan and Saudi Arabia, sworn enemies of Israel. In the Gulf of Aqaba, a disaster is approaching. The planes fly directly over King Hussein of Jordan's yacht. He looks up at the sky. He sees the Star of David on the wings and immediately realizes. He orders his crew to alert the command center in Amman. The Israelis are going to hit the reactor. But for some reason, this warning doesn't reach Iraq in time. In the skies over Saudi Arabia, the pilots face another challenge. The advanced American AWACS radars are recently delivered to the Saudis could identify them at any moment. Israel had discovered a gap in Iraq's radar coverage near the Saudi border, Antito, and the pilots had to pass through this route precisely. To evade the radars, they maneuvered through valleys and between mountains. Sometimes they flew so close to the ground that their wings were very close to the rocks. At one point, after the fuel in the tanks runs out, they jettison them in the deserts, an action that is prohibited in F-16s because it might hit the bombs and destroy the aircraft. But fortunately, 16 fuel tanks are jettisoned in the desert, and no incident occurs. It is said that those tanks still exist among the sands of Saudi Arabia. At 6:35 p.m., the pilots are approaching the target. The Osirak Reactor is now in their sight, a gray dome that glistens under the sunlight, surrounded by anti-aircraft batteries and SAM missiles. But miraculously, Iraq's radars are off. The guards who were changing shifts and having dinner were caught off guard. Every evening, Iraq's radars were turned off for dinner, and Israel had chosen this exact moment to attack. On a Sunday, when the French technicians are not on site and the Iraqi staff are resting, Ziv Raz gives the order. The target is in sight, ready for attack. The F-15s separate and climb to a high altitude to intercept any Iraqi aircraft. The F-16s ascend to an altitude of 6,900 feet. They turn on the video recording cameras and prepare the Mark 84 bombs. These bombs, chosen for their reliability, are designed with a 12-second delay to detonate after penetrating concrete. The pilots dive at a 35-degree angle, ready to fire at the target. But at the last moment, Raz realizes that he miscalculated the dive point. Yiftash Yadin, his teammate, maneuvers below and releases the bombs. Raz makes a quick turn and drops his bombs right after. A massive explosion lights up the sky. Flames and black smoke rise into the air. The other F-16s also release their bombs in an orderly fashion, with a 5-second interval. Ilan Ramon, the last pilot, releases his bombs and ascends into the sky with afterburners. He later said that this operation was more complex than the exercises. The Iraqi guards, who are not adequately trained, fire blindly and even damage their own positions. A few SAM-7 missiles are also launched, but none hit the target. As the bombs are released, the aircraft become lighter and can now move at a higher speed. Out of 16 Mark 84 bombs, 14 hit the target. However, the reactor is completely destroyed. The gigantic dome is now just a large crater. The entire attack lasted only 2 minutes. The pilots now have to cover another 1,600 kilometers to get home. Unlike the outbound journey, which was cautious and took indirect routes, they choose the shortest path on the return. The Israeli Air Force has prepared fighter jets to intercept potential Iraqi MiGs and rescue helicopters for downed pilots. The fuel of the Israeli aircraft is critically low. Relik Shafir, one of the F-16 pilots, had refueling issues and feels that his fighter might not make it back to the base. The pilots are worried about Ilan Ramon. He was the last one to release his bombs and did not respond to the radio for a moment. Ziv Raz, the group leader, almost broke protocol and shouted Ramon's real name. But suddenly, Ramon's voice came over the radio. The mission was accomplished. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Miraculously, no Iraqi aircraft took off to pursue them. No SAM missiles are fired, and the pilots fly at 40,000 feet towards Israel. While for the first time, they talk to each other over the radio. Ziv Raz laughs and says, "It's not over yet. We have to land." When the wheels of the planes touch the ground at the base, cheers of joy erupt. Relik and Ilan Ramon get out of their planes and embrace each other without saying a word. Just a minute of silence and an embrace. They are alive. The world is shocked by this attack. The next day, Menachem Begin announces the success of Operation Opera to the people of Israel. But this secret is soon revealed. when Jordan's national radio broadcast the news of Israel's attack on Iraq. The United Nations unanimously condemns Israel. The Arab countries call for sanctions and revenge. Even Ronald Reagan, the President of the United States, is shocked by this operation. George Bush, the Vice President, calls for punishing Israel. Angry at Israel's use of American jets, without informing Washington, Reagan suspends the delivery of 4 jets to Israel. It's true that on the surface, the Americans opposed this incident and even showed that they were angry about this move. However, other evidence and documents suggest that the Americans themselves provided some information to the Israelis so they could carry out this operation. In other words, conducting this operation without the satellite images that the Americans had seems very unlikely, and the Israelis also had these images. It's true that the Americans outwardly opposed this plan, but after the operation was carried out, they also breathed a sigh of relief before Saddam could go nuclear. And if this hadn't happened, perhaps Saddam would never have fallen in that way. The French, of course, claimed that this nuclear reactor was not capable of producing an atomic bomb. Saddam Hussein wouldn't have spent so much money without intending to produce an atomic bomb. The French, having received full payment for their reactor, were somewhat secretly pleased that the project was destroyed, as they no longer had to provide additional services to the Iraqi government. On the other hand, Saddam Hussein was very angry about this operation. Saddam Hussein ordered the execution of the air defense commander of that area along with all his subordinates to serve as a lesson for other Iraqi officers. Even the 2 radar operators who were responsible for the radar that night and had turned it off to go have dinner and return were also executed. And many believe that after Saddam Hussein could no longer obtain a nuclear bomb, he turned towards weapons of mass destruction and chemical weapons, which we later saw their impact in the Iran-Iraq war. Operation Opera is one of the most precise and successful preemptive strikes in the history of military warfare. The buildings surrounding the reactor remained untouched, and the nuclear fuel was not damaged, which prevented a radioactive disaster. This attack not only halted Iraq's nuclear program for years, but also sent a clear message to Israel's enemies. We will never allow an existential threat against us to take shape. Iran's role in this victory is undeniable. The bravery of Iranian pilots in reconnaissance missions provided vital intelligence and helped Israel deliver a precise blow to Saddam. This covert cooperation, although under the guise of apparent enmity, demonstrated that even enemies can unite against a common threat. The end of this video is a question that arises here. It is whether, if you were a senior official of the Islamic Republic, would you agree to cooperate with Israel for the destruction or defeat of Saddam or not? Would you prefer to fight Saddam alone but not help the Israelis? I read all your comments and will respond to them as much as possible. Until the next video, take care.